Okay, that's a little warm up for marking, and it's a mark. You can keep going too, and I'll introduce the next exercise in a minute, and I'll say a couple of things. Yeah, marking and noting is. Sometimes I find myself. I get into the marking, and I'm making a pattern of marks, and I was doing this for a while, doing like these marks, like that. You can see those too well. Yeah, just like kind of a L-shaped marks. And that was just noting, okay, I paid attention to the thought, I paid attention, I noticed like that. And then I find myself getting into just the pattern and the rhythm of doing it, which is a kind of a systematic practice, and that's okay. And that in itself gives some avenue for flow. So if you find you're doing that and that's pleasurable, certainly kind of work that way. And then at some moment, you'll either reach an end to where that's taken you, or you'll come back to the center and say, okay, where's my attention now? Where's my attention now? And sometimes if your attention is on the drawing and you're marking the attention on the drawing, and then your attention's on the drawing again, it becomes a kind of feedback loop, and that's also kind of nice. So your marks can take on a similarity of character. So if people want to hold up just really quickly, and also look at the same time, and can kind of see them, just so we see everybody marking, if you're comfortable doing it. Yeah, so there's a lot of marking. Yeah, marking is a great place to start. It's very freeing. I think it's very easy to do marking practice and not judge, because you get so involved in the paying attention to attention, and because it's not it's really focused on a different goal than what we traditionally think of as drawing. It's really easy to let go of the critic in the case. So I think it's a nice place to start. Okay, the next one we're going to do is going to be called outward growth. And it's what I alluded to at the end there. We're going to start noticing what's arising, noticing the thought that's arising. So we're going to be doing the same thing, but we're going to kind of get a little bit more meta, a little like one step outside as we do it. So here we are. We have our pencil, we have the paper, we're making contact with the paper, and we're noticing where our attention is, and we're making a mark. And we're noticing where our attention is, and we're making a mark like that. So can start that the same. Okay, and we want to try at the same time we're doing that to notice what's arising, like notice any thoughts that come up, or any thoughts that we have about what we're doing, or just where is our mind when that's going on. Okay, and I want to use your imagination to imagine that energy that's coming up in your mind. So for instance, you're initiating the idea that you're looking at your attention already. That is something going on, some thought going on. So I'm going to look at my attention, take that thought, and then just imagine it coming like from your mind down your arm, through your wrist, down to the pencil, and then onto the page like that. So imagine the energy kind of moving through your body from its source. And don't try not to get, or just notice if you do get caught up in the web of thoughts, but then you move the energy from your shoulder, down your arm, into your hand, into the pencil. And then somehow that energy gets kind of trapped. We're imagining this trapped in the carbon of the pencil or the ink or the marker. And that energy is like trapped there on the page now. That energy directs the tip of the marker, and now it resides in the page. So somehow this thought has arisen, and it's come down into the world and put onto the page. And we're just watching that happen. So let's watch that for a minute or so. And we get to the end of that loop there, when it's come from your idea that you're going to notice your attention, or you're going to make, you can even say, I'm going to make a mark. That's even enough of a thought. Going to make a mark. And then the energy comes down into the pencil, it makes the mark, and then there's this kind of feedback from the end. Ah, I see, I've made the mark, there's the mark. And then without judgment, just make decide to make the next one, and then make that, and then watch that loop around. Okay, so there were a couple. I heard from a couple of people who wanted to attend, and there some of them are here, and there's always the little fear about how am I going to make marks? How am I going to move forward? And people talk about artist block, and I just want to say a couple of words about that because we talk about that a lot. How to get moving or how to get started on things, and what we call block can arise from a number of sources, and mostly there's a fear about our performance, what we produce, how it's going to look, how we're going to feel about it, what if someone else sees it, that kind of thing. It's this judgment, this inner critic. It's very natural response. That's the first thing I would say about it, is that we tend to clam up when we get that response. When that fear comes, and we should just notice that fear is the most natural thing, because when we open up ourselves to the unknown and to the creative, we become vulnerable. And so you can see in a survival situation how being open, vulnerable can be dangerous. And so our bodies and our minds are sort of naturally designed to keep all that in. But we don't live in the times that we are in the jungle or something. we have the opportunity to share. We have the opportunity to create. We're surrounded by creative work. I saw a Facebook meme that was said something like, remember when you're stuck at home and nothing to do, and you're binge watching a series on Netflix. Remember, it's the arts that you've turned to to console you, you know. And it's the same with the drawing. It's the openness and the creativity that gives us that optimism. So I also heard a story about the artist Christo, who made huge outdoor installations, and he had a project in California many years ago called Running Fence, where he hung a curtain from a farm down through the fields of the farm and then all the way down to the ocean. And there was a great documentary about this piece, Running Fence. And because there were all sorts of issues about, was it environmentally safe to put the curtain and divide where the wildlife can go? And was the curtain gonna deteriorate and pollute? There were all kinds of questions. And it turned out that the art for Christo and his wife, Jean-Claude, was as much about being with people and negotiating with people and figuring out how to make it happen as it was to have the thing. And they wouldn't do it until everyone agreed and everyone had to be part of it. And so it was a really wonderful projects in the way that they communicated and worked with them. And when they did Running Fence, there was a farmer who really didn't want Running Fence. He really saw no point in it. He was a farmer and he saw no point. He grew crops and it was all very purposeful. And this art stuff was really not something that he wanted to participate in, et cetera, et cetera. And they had a meeting at his farmhouse, and Jean-Claude describes the end of the meeting when they couldn't really ever quite convince him, but then they went outside onto his front porch and they were going away. And she noticed in his front yard, in front of the house, was a flower bed. And she says, I know you grow all these crops, but why do you have these flowers? And then he got it. He saw, okay. This is when you open up in your drawing and you put yourself out there and you make these works, it's like you're blooming like a flower. You're just this vulnerable thing, you know. And it's so easy to just pick that and crush that and take it away. And it's hard to protect that and cultivate that and grow that. And that's why sometimes we get blocked up, because you know, we're afraid that that will that our, you know, someone will destroy that flower. that is too vulnerable to be sometimes. So so it's nice to practice alone, and it's also nice to practice and share with other people. And hopefully you'll see that as we go, that there are so many goals and so much great feedback in just drawing that you'll be able to work right through it. Now, I'll talk about that blank page for one more second. So I'll ask everybody to either go to a blank page, or to, if you want to work on the page you're on, just draw a box. That'll be, you could say that's the new area. So we're gonna confront that openness and that emptiness. And one thing I really love about the blank page, and I think that also becomes another reason that the blank page is scary, is that anything is possible, right? This is a blank page, so this could be the greatest drawing ever made. In 10 minutes from now, this could be the greatest drawing ever made in history. It could be on this page. But at the same time, it could be the absolute worst drawing you've ever seen in your, okay, no such thing as the two of them, but that could be, we could think that that's the case, okay? And another frightening thing is that when I take my pencil and I put it on, I put it on the page, if I put it here, or if I put it here, if I put it here, okay. If I put my pencil there and I make a mark, I've started every drawing that has a mark in that place, but at the same time, I've eliminated every possible drawing that doesn't have that mark. So as soon as we start making marks, the set of possible drawings starts, it gets so small, and we feel that. I think we really feel that. We feel like, that's, so I want to do an exercise where we're going to make the mark and we're going to look for that feeling. We're going to look for the immediate response to that mark. We did a little of that last week, so I want to do it again. We're going to put that down. Paul Klee calls that moment when you touch the pencil to the page, he calls that the cosmogenic moment. And he says that because when you make that mark, you create that pages, that's the new cosmos. That's the new world that you've created. The new world includes that mark. So you've generated a whole new cosmos, which includes this one mark on the page. And as you continue to make marks, you continue to develop that whole cosmos. I put up a quote from Paul Klee. Just give me a sec. I think I grabbed it just before. Yeah, here we go. The painter is a creator. From putting a dot of paint or creating a point on a canvas or paper, the chaos, and by that he means all the possibilities, becomes ordered step by step. The painter can create an order that not only gives form to the chaos, but may create a new form. So he was a great thinker about this possibility space and everything that could come into being. So it's fun to draw and think that this is a new world, that this is a new thing that's coming into the world, and contemplate that novelty, that originality. Okay. Yeah, got a lot of stuff. Another way to work this exercise is to choose the point, choose the cosmogenic moment. And you could actually choose different points on the same page. It doesn't have to always be a blank page, but it's good fun to start by breaking up the symmetry on a blank page. But okay, take that point and then grow it outward. That was another exercise that Paul Klee gave at the Bauhaus, was to work outward from the point and look at all the possibilities. So choose a point and work outward, you know, a few inches, and then choose another point and work outward. I want to do this for a couple minutes, and I'll start you all on it, and then I'll kind of speak over it a little bit, but yeah. So the exercise is to put your pencil down on a point and then work outward a couple of inches from that point, and it, however you like to work outward, shapes or lines or whatever. And I'll do that with you for a sec.
Can I just check what the previous exercise is called again?
The previous exercise was, I think, well, we did cosmogenic moment. We did noting. We did serious scribbling. We did noting. We did cosmogenic moment. Now
There's
we're doing
one in between.
outward growth. That was okay.
Okay. Okay.
And then outward growth. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe I'm going a little fast. I should say about the exercises that Lauren, you have something?
Yeah, I don't really understand the difference between noting and outward growth.
Okay. Yeah. In noting, we're letting our hand just go however the energy takes it. So it starts at a point, but it can make a shape, and the shape can repeat. This one, we're just starting at a point and just kind of here, just like, this is an outward growth. That's outward growth. We're just working around a point. So we're more centering the energy, walking out from the point. I had something else there. I can't remember now.
Something to do with being aware of the mark on the page, but it was before cosmogenic moment. Or is that the same thing?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about noticing what's happening at the point of the pencil as you're moving outward. Again, we did this in the mark making. We do this in a lot of exercises, but we'll call attention to not only to paying attention to what mark we're making, but also to what's coming up as we do it. If we have other thoughts, if the judgment comes up. Now, one thing we can learn is that if we engage our senses, and it's kind of been shown, if we engage our eyes and our hand, our touch sense and our eyes at the same time, that helps to quiet that inner dialogue. And so it's often interesting to note if you're have a lot of criticism and feedback, if you put your attention really on the physicality, on the way the pencil feels, and really put your focus of your eyes down onto the line, that it'll be calming, that it'll cut down on the inner chat. So why does doing the creative work and the contemplative work together feel good? One is that energetic movement that we get that kind of and push out of the energy. The physical movement, actually moving our hands and doing something with our bodies, is good. And the sensory engagement, this network, this quieting of the default mode, is also soothing. Then there's this positive feedback loop that we make the mark and we see something, and our brains really feed on novelty. They feed on curiosity and originality. And so seeing something new, yeah, it can be judged, but it can also be very exciting. And when we look back at what we've done over the course of making all those marks and making all those drawings, yeah, that can be very, very positive feedback. Okay, so Oh, I know what I was going to say before. I was going to say I try to give a lot of exercises, maybe 4 or 5 at a time on one of these classes, and we're trying them out maybe for a few minutes each or such. And I had said it last week, but I'd like that you would practice them, and especially like that you'd practice the ones that resonate with you. And really, what we're trying to find in introducing, I might introduce, so many exercises over the course of the week, but really you only need the one that works for you, that brings you that joy. And you'll know when you find it that it may just be marking, and it might be serious scribbling, and it might be outward growth. It might be the marking we did last week, or next week we're going to move into some rendering techniques and some drawing techniques. And so if you're more interested in looking and drawing and rendering, then there'll be those exercises. But really what I intend is that you'll find something that works for you, and that you'll be able to continue doing it. And that's really what I hope. Okay, so this exercise is called balancing attention and awareness. And this has more of a meditative aspect to it. Okay, so first we're going to place our attention on attention. That's what we've been practicing for the hour, which is to look at where our attention is. So let's start with attention on attention. And then let's establish an object of that attention, and let that be the pencil point. So now we place our attention on the pencil point. And this exercise, and of course, you're going to hear about what you have to do. I'm going to give you the instructions, but you also notice how you're feeling about it, and whether you think it's interesting to do it, and that kind of thing. So again, we're putting our attention on our attention, but we're not forgetting that we're thinking creatures. Okay, so we make a mark and watch what comes up. Is it exciting, disappointing? Does something change in our mind? When I say put your attention on the pencil point, the object of your attention, focus on like what's coming out. So let's just really look at like what comes out of the pencil. We're watching the tip of the pencil, and we're just really looking at what comes out. We're watching that line as it forms. If your attention wavers from watching that line, just bring it back to that line. Okay, so now simultaneous to watching that line and bringing your attention back to that line, you're also hearing my voice, and I'm asking you to be aware of that at the same time. Becomes like riding a bike. We're like pedaling with the line making. That's like the energetic part, but we also have to steer. And so our awareness keeps us on track, keeps us going. That's what pulls us back, pulls our attention back, and puts it forward. So when we work forward, when we work on our drawings, we're making the marks. They're feeding back into our eyes. We're noticing if there's any reaction. We're bringing our attention back to the pencil, and we're making the next mark. And we're going to see that over and over, that balance. So it becomes so nice. And that line just becomes a kind of a diagram of that process for us, all its variations. attention on the line, and then awareness that we're paying attention to the line. We're drawing the line, and we know we're drawing the line at the same time. That way we have attention and awareness kind of cooperating, being like two parts of the same flow. Becomes at some point like that drawing is just making itself and we're just watching. There's no one judging it, just it's appearing on the page. Well, I didn't know about the class, but I finally got calmed down, so that's good. It's a wonderful process when it works, when you can make that flow arise, when what that energy comes up moves out, and you can kind of just let that go without thinking about what's happening on the page. Okay, so that's more or less the basics of mark making. That's sort of the beginning of it, but I haven't yet opened up for questions, so I do want to take a moment before I have a few more things to close with. But I did want to open up at this point and see a couple who've been here for a couple of weeks, and just if you have any questions or suggestions or what have you, I'm happy to hear. Maybe if you want to raise your hand, I guess it'd be easier. Okay, Bev.
I just wanted to comment on two things. This was such a wonderful exercise, but as my pen got to the edge of the page, this little part of me like tightened up, like where's it? I'm losing my path. And the other thing was that when I was drawing, when the pen came up, there was a hesitation when it intersected another line, and I decided to just let it keep going. So.
Oh, those are beautiful. Those are really great. Yeah, you brought up so many great points. That when you notice, like for instance, the edge of the page, and if you're open enough and you see that little contraction, you see that hesitation start to come in, or whatever little fear start to come in. There's really something there, is what I find. There's something there. There's some social convention or some assumption or some unspoken rule that you have, like coming into play,
I felt like it was about to fall off a cliff or something, and that's a little scary. It's like, where do I go from here? Oh, I better go back.
That's good. Yeah, we'll see as we get into the reading the drawings and the story yeah, a lot of unspoken rules that you have and unspoken limits that you have manifest themselves in the way that you decide what to do in a drawing. So I think that's really great stuff, Bev. And the crossing of the line also is really I make several exercises where, yeah, do you cross the lines or not is a really good one. Yeah, we draw grids and things like that sometimes just to force the crossing of the line. So that's a good point. Shelley.
Yeah, John, just a couple things. When you say line, it could be point. It doesn't mean you're not talking literal line, right?
Yeah. I should be saying mark, something like
No,
that.
I figured that.
I fall into pencil and line as kind of default for marker and mark being made.
And can you show examples of each of the exercises? Because I am getting a little confused as to the subtlety between some of them.
Okay, that's a good idea. I don't want to do too much to
and that's me needing concrete instructions telling me what to do. That's probably more about me than anything else. But
I could be more clear. And one thing I hope to do is I'm just getting organized online now. I redid the Drawing Your Own Path website this week to put all the links and the dates and things like that. So I'm just getting that organized. But what I hope to do is put links to the recordings of these and also to list the exercises there. So it might be good also to put a small picture in there or something like that. That's a good idea.
That's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
You.
Okay, Pat.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I realized that my tendency is to put things into patterns, immediately wanting to feel some sense of organization, even though I feel free to make marks wherever. I also feel more comfortable if I know I'm following some kind of a pattern. So I realized, that's kind of a limiting force in my drawing.
Yeah, what you're doing and noticing that that's the way to go. That's the direction you want to head. Is just you don't have to solve it. You don't even have to change it. But just being able to notice it sometimes it'll like just open up on its own at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. That's great to point out. Yeah. Good noting.
Thanks.
Oh, Michelle, cool.
So today I could be really aware of the line and aware of being aware of the line, but there would be days where I'm less able to do that. So what are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on the quality of the attention you're paying? So is it just, I guess it's dealing with when that's not working, is it just keeping on going with it until you start to feel that way?
These are great. These are perfect questions. Yeah, this is great. First of all, notice if you're judging the quality of the awareness. Although you should pay attention to it. Yeah. Notice notice how, maybe just how you're judging. Yeah. If you notice that that there's less clarity, that's okay to notice that. Some days there is, some days there's tension, some days there's relaxation. Yeah. So you notice that. And in the meditation, in the Great Perfection, there's discipline and effort are two of the 6 pillars there that are listed, and that means discipline is the willingness to show up every day, and I was saying last week, even if you make 4 lines on the page, 4 angry lines on the page, then in the course of time, when you look back, you'll realize where you were and who you were and what was going on in that time. So feeling not how you think you should feel is kind of an opportunity to record that. You're always in a place that's a little bit different. So the thing to be careful about is not to let it shut you down. So that's where the effort comes in. So yeah, the discipline enough to show up, and the effort enough to actually do the marks. And you can have some trust in that. It might take some time, but there'll be a moment when you look back, maybe it'll be 5 days or 3 days, or maybe it'll be 10 days, or maybe it'll be a year later. And you'll see in that drawing something about who you were and what was going on at the time that you didn't even realize at the time was being recorded in it. So we got to be really open about what we make. Yeah. And of course we always want to feel like it's all flowing and it's all beautiful and it's all good. And that's certainly worthwhile to want that or to try to make good drawings, although you don't want to get too hung up that you don't work, because it's not that. It's good to seek for aesthetic balance, and it's good to seek for aliveness in the drawings. That's fine. But not to hope. I mean, you can hope for it, but don't get hung up on the hoping for it. You can notice that you're hoping for it, something like that. But yeah, it goes the same in meditation as well. You just notice what is happening at the moment. And the drawing, one of the really beautiful things I love about creative contemplative practice is that you do all those things that you do in meditation of noticing what's happening, but you get this kind of printout of it at the same time. It's kind of like you get a record of it. And that changes the quality of the whole practice for me, is that I can look back on those marks and that record and sort of see that and understand, it accelerated for me the self-understanding. Okay, any others? Okay.
John,
Yeah. Hi, Terry.
one quick. Is it a discipline to just stay with marking and not go into form? If your marks start reminding you of something and you drift into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a believer that there are different schools in meditation about whether you should pay attention to the content of the thought or just notice the thought arising and let it go. And I'm of the school that you need to do what you need to do. So if a thought is coming up over and over in meditation, maybe it's time to deal with it and let it go. And I think the same in drawing. And especially if you feel joyful toward it, if it's feeling good and you're making that mark, just make that. And if it's taking you on a story and a journey in your mind, go that way, because things open up. For me, my experience is that and as it began with improvisational drawing for me, but it's been 20 years ago. But the first things that came up were the most sort of traumatic and deeply rooted, and the things that needed to be dealt with in the unconscious that needed to get out. Those were the stories that kind of came up if I let myself go that way. And I feel that's a valuable thing. And it's kind of also when I began in the field, I didn't start right into meditation, but I was in all sorts of mindfulness and creativity and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of written about healing. And I kept thinking, I want the wisdom. I don't want the healing. Forget that. I want the wisdom. I wanted the good stuff. I wanted the powers and the secrets, all the Taoist masters and these kind of things. I was all into that. But it turned out that I couldn't go any further into some of those better teachings until I had kind of cleaned up my own junk. And, I had to be comfortable enough with myself and into what I was doing and have enough internal flow and that's the way they get out. That was the healing for me. So yeah, what you're pointing to is a really important thing. And I mean, of course, if something's opening up and it's scary, and you don't feel comfortable, don't make it too big, don't get too involved in it. You have to use a little bit of like judgment there. But if it's comfortable, I find that's a great way to liberate thoughts and let things go.
One quick thing.
Yeah.
Will you be able to post the quote you had from Paul Klee?
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good, Pat. I like that. This is
Thank you.
amazing. This feedback is, I have like some people in the group that we started the Drawing Your Own Path drawing bee, I think it's over 3 years ago. And so there's a lot of experience here for sure, which makes it so much fun.
It is
Okay.
great.
So I have tons of more. You got into like 4 pages into the book or something like that. So, and you're welcome to stay along, and we'll move a little more into like more intentional mark making next week, and I'll start to introduce some more concepts about, on the art side, about the good practices about shading and rendering and that kind of thing. We'll go through some of that because some of that's important. But and you'll find that this basis of attention and awareness being in balance and being able to make the mark and know you're making the mark simultaneously, that's a good strength. That's like a muscle of mindfulness that you can build. And that's the little engine at which all these other practices are going to be built on eventually. Okay. And again, we, Drawing Bee is Tuesday, but there's also people that are meeting every night at 9 o'clock for drawing. And we're also at 11 a.m. Eastern for an hour silent drawing in the morning. I think we had a good group this morning. I had 5 or 6 people drawing this morning. It was really amazing. Robert and Terry and some regulars there. And that's silent drawing, which is a great time of practice. And also I'm using Facebook for the most part to post my drawings and things, and Instagram, but there's also a social media service called MeWe, which there's a Drawing Your Own Path group there. If you're less inclined to use Facebook or you want a little more privacy, you're also welcome to join that. So there are a lot of avenues to join in. And if you have any other feedback, please let me know. You can see I'm just molding it as we go here. But also what's that?
Is the daily drawing?
There's a daily silent drawing at 11 to 12. And then there's also a group that's been meeting at 9 p.m. Eastern. That's why this is at 8. They'll meet in a minute in here.
Oh.
If you want to stay, you can stay for the next hour and just do a B, and that's more social and chatting. Okay, so let me close. Let me do my close. Sorry, Bev.
Everyone's welcome to stay and just.
One thing though, the silent drawing at 11 is only Monday through Friday, not every day.
Oh, right. Silent drawings weekdays. Okay. Ellen's leaving. Okay, so one more second. Okay, so I'm just going to leave you with a poem, one poem, which is a E.E. Cumming poem, and it's a second stanza, and it relates to our cosmogenic moment. And E.E. Cumming says, yes is a world, and in this world of yes, live skillfully curled all worlds. Just think about how yes opens the door. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a great pleasure for me. And see you soon. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have to do. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you, Robert. Good to see everyone else.
Good to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Good to see everybody.
Yeah. Drawing Bee time.
Okay, so